Exciting
Tatiana,
here.
hello, welcome. Thank you.
I've been so looking forward to that conversation about
Mm,
intensity.
yep.
And say a couple words about yourself, Chris, please.
Yeah, so my name is Chris Frolic. I live in Toronto, Canada, and um, I have lived a very unconventional life that for a long time I was actually quite embarrassed of how unusual it was, and now I'm like leaning in more and more into like embracing it and holding this part of me, and being on LinkedIn is part of this journey that I'm on. You know, of someone who has an conventional past, which includes just not having, like I call myself a high school dropout because that's technically true. But then I went on to become one of the world's biggest selling DJs as Anabolic Frolic in the 1990s. I was a pioneer of early raves, sold hundreds of thousands of albums and toured the world. And then following that, I did the completely expected thing and I became a comedy stage hypnotist. And for several years, I performed hypnosis shows across Canada. I appeared on television. I hypnotized, by my guess, is about 5,000 people on stages doing comedy hypnosis for mostly high schools and also corporate shows. And then following that, I did the completely expected thing and I became a tech co-founder. And I founded a piece of software called Stealth Seminar, which is an automated webinar system, which I built by hand with no training or teachings, and $450 of off-the-shelf parts. It ended up being used by over 60 million people, and we just sold it last year to a private equity fund. And then lately I've been challenging myself, what's next? And I've been playing around with something I call an impossible goal. So in recent times, I started declaring that I will be part of the team that will win the Nobel Peace Prize for solving climate change. I felt foolish just saying these things at first, but all of a sudden people started hearing me say it. Next thing I know, I was invited to speak at the COP climate conference in Dubai last year. I'm working on a book around being a climate optimist and seeking opportunity within climate, from that space. And then I've been teaching what I've learned around this idea of an impossible goal and bringing it to other venues. So even just last week, I spoke at Queen's University here in Canada to a bunch of cancer doctors and researchers to share them my framework around what an impossible goal is and how they could apply it to their work. Again, it's about altering and expanding your thinking. And it was a personal treat for me to go into what I call an ivory tower university for someone who does not have an education. But my qualifications is this life that I've lived, and that's what made me qualified. And I showed up there and I was able to own it. And that's a more recent accomplishment of mine, because for a long time, like I said, I didn't understand that this fantastic story that I just shared with you over the last 2 minutes, like I made that happen. Like that didn't just happen on its own. And I'm coming to a better understanding of that.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Chris, you live intense life, is what I would call, right? You make it happen, and what a diversity of experience. And you see, for me, intensity, it is go full in into something. It is, and it's also a presence of certain energy, right? It's this like focus, it's this passion, right? And then in a healthy version, it's also a connection to purpose. And your whole life has been what it appears to me quite intense. It is intense energy.
Very intense. Yeah. And something that I just came to a realization very recently in a prior conversation you and I had about my relationship with what you call toxic intensity, and how that was very present for much of my life, just like living on the edge, like just very precarious, like betting the farm again and again, taking huge risks, risking everything in my life in pursuit of whatever it was that I was chasing, being willing to completely change my career path, and start over again and again. Like this idea of reinvention comes with a lot of intensity and risk. And so something I'm trying to be more mindful of now, and hopefully we can talk more about it today, is more healthy intensity. That, and I believe something that's holding me back even now is I know my old toxic toolbox, right? Like the toxic intensity. I know the tools that I used to use, and I don't want to use those tools anymore. So I'm seeking more healthy intensity. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally hear your intention. And I'd like to invite you to consider that actually healthy and toxic intensity, they kind of coexist together, right?
Sure.
It's almost like a color range, color shade, right? And it goes into different colors when it goes into healthy version. And yet,
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So sorry to interrupt, but yes, I was falling into a binary thinking, right? Toxic, healthy, on, off. I was describing it to you just now. So I hear, sorry, I had to interrupt you because thank you. The
yeah,
gradient,
okay.
the gradient is what we're seeking. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And of course, for me, intensity, it's the energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every light has a shadow. So by denying the shadow side, we're denying this powerful energy. And it's about recognizing when one goes in their own toxic version of intensity and thinking, oh, I see that. And that's such a powerful energy. How can now I take that energy and turn it for creation?
Mm. So I feel like when I, like with my usage around an impossible goal, that is me funneling it. So I am like, I'm tapping into all the good, healthy parts, and I'm focused. I am focusing it into a healthy outlet, and there's a story within me that, like, I have to do it differently than I used to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's fascinating. So
Mm.
so for me, we go into more healthy version of intensity when we are clearly connected with purpose. If you look on the vertical axis,
Yeah.
purpose, yeah, and on horizontal axis, it's actually self-trust. Or recently, I was speaking to the leader. It might be trusting in their team to the extent that there is nothing to prove. So it's more goes from this energy of, okay, what would serve this purpose right now, right? And what would help me and who would help me to show up with the energy of there is nothing to prove. There is no need to go into defense or attack or proving that I'm not a camel,
Yeah.
It's like, this is what is important for me and what would serve to make it happen for us together as a team.
Mm-hmm.
How does it like what are you hearing? And
Well, the phrase "there's nothing to prove" is landing with me because I think I'm in pursuit of proving myself at all times, right? So so that's where it becomes like an edge for me, like trusting that there is nothing to prove. Yeah. Yeah.
mm, So fascinating. So what would it be? Um, wh- what is your version of going into toxicity from this trying to prove yourself, or might be something else? Because what I also heard you say, and you can choose what you talk about. What I
Okay.
also heard you say when you were describing yourself, that you said it's, well, as I was reinventing myself, I was taking a lot of risk, and risk taking for me can be also a sign of creation, of healthy intensity on this gradient, right? So when does it go into this destructive version of energy?
Well, using the historical examples of my reinvention story, it's starting something new when I don't really have resources, and speaking financially, right? So I'm coming out of, like, when my DJ career ended, I went through a personal bankruptcy. I was ruined financially, and then I started this whole other thing. Like, instead of getting a job, I went, I pursued this other thing. Um, and like this idea of burning the ships. The earlier explorers, when they came to North America, they would burn their ships, so the men had no option to go home, and so they were forced to make a new life, in the new world, as hard as that was, because there was no other choice, right? So to me, I'm equating that to a toxic intensity, like lighting the ship on fire, not giving yourself an opportunity to go back, like, at all. There's probably a part of, like, as I'm saying this in real time to you, a common trait of my reinvention is it's a one-way road, right? Like I go on to the next thing and I do not look back, like, um, and I think that's part of the toxic part of it, burning of the
Mhm.
ships. And it was a recipe for my success, because I gave myself no choice but to succeed at this new thing that I was pursuing.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so
Yeah,
it gets complicated. Yeah.
I hear you that it's coming to that point of burning the bridges,
Hmm.
and for what purpose? Because if it's, what if it's,
For what purpose?
well, what if it's rooted into complete self-trust, do you know? Or is it driven by certain type of fear and escapism? You see? Because what if that, like, you trusted yourself so much that you knew that it's okay to burn those bridges because you need to leave that behind, right? And having this complete trust in self.
There is a lot of self-trust. There was then, there is today. And I'm someone very comfortable with, um, uh, to use another metaphor, blazing a trail, right? So to cut across the grass where no one's been and make a new trail, I'm very comfortable with that, right? So, and the trust is, I guess, just a belief very core to me that I will make it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So this unshakable self-belief, right?
I'm sort of speaking this aloud to you right now, maybe for the first time, because as I look at these elements, and even around this idea that I'm willing to take on this impossible challenge and impossible goal of, a huge human existential challenge, crisis, and state that it can be done, like, even just to have that belief, um um uh that I'm willing to say it.
Mhm, mhm.
I'm tapping into this history of mine. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. And do you see how that is a creative energy, when it's like when you show up with this unshakable belief, and you actually, on the back of it, you have a track record of that, right?
I have a track record of that, and I'm focusing it now on something that motivates me to take on something, so large, and gives me the additional benefit of, I know my story inspires people. So I'm creating my next chapter, my next story in real time, and it lets me. You and I, before we started on camera today, we're talking about, we put out into the world what it is that we're seeking, right? So so I'm seeking inspiration from others, so it makes sense to me that I'm also creating it.
Yeah, and to allow oneself to be inspired by others, it also takes this unshakable self-belief, because then the inspiration from others is not a threat, it's an opportunity.
For sure. That's a good distinction. Yeah. So I'm not this is where the whole abundant mindset comes in, or win-wins, or so someone else's success doesn't diminish mine.
Yeah. And what I'm also, because I believe that we always have to look at both sides to be able to comprehend all nuances and all gradients of such a powerful force as intensity within ourselves. So obviously, when you connect it with this unshakable self-belief and actually belief also in others and in possibility and opportunity, you go into this creation, and something what appears to be impossible for many becomes possible, turning from DJ to hypnotist to a successful
Tech
entrepreneur,
co-founder.
selling the business to private equity house, and setting yourself financially up. So when is that energy turns in some destructive force, either to yourself or to others, and like almost like attack, or might be defense? When is this nuance that, if you look at your journey?
Yeah. Well, I think it's something I'm going through now, which is it's a pressure I put on myself to outdo myself, right? So the next story has to be better than the last story, and every day I need to be productive, and every day I need to produce content, and by producing content, it could just be writing or something. And if I'm not producing at a level that I expect of myself, then there's some real negative language that exists in my mind about, I hate saying this, but I have to say, like I'm a loser. Like, just like the word loser, like that's a word that shows up for me, right? You're a loser unless you're constantly creating and producing. And so that's my answer.
Yeah, Kristen, thank you for being so vulnerable and honest. And yeah, it's painful to have that voice in the head, right? When it's like that attacks you, and since you exhibit a strong energy, that voice probably has also the strong energy, right? It's like, wow, it's intense.
It is intense. Yeah. So, and I get it. All of this is like a double-edged sword, right? So basically, what I just described is negative, and yet it's a factor in the life that I've created for myself. So it's like, yeah.
Yes, and this voice, it's kind of like sometimes might be, it says one thing, but actually, like this creativity which you have, it might be stifling it, because it sends one into fear, right? Or am I interpreting it wrongly?
It probably does stifle my creativity at times, and I feel like today, this week, I feel very stifled, and that voice is very present this week, like in real time, like I gave myself a goal of completing my next book like this month, before the new year, and And some days I can be very creative and I can produce like some good content, good pages. And then the last few days I've not been producing, so that voice is very present in me, and it's not helping me. Like, it's not helping me. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And when we asked, whose voice is that? What if you could draw a picture, give it a name?
Yeah. I mean, the best explanation I can give is it's my father's voice. Like, it's my father, right? So, or at least the version of him that exists within me. Yeah. And I know that I mean, he's a farmer, he's a laborer, so he only knows how to trade time for money. He doesn't understand creating value. He doesn't understand, like, there's other ways to express yourself in the world. And yet I live, with that voice. Yeah.
And we create that. We take those voices. I was just working with one of my clients who was telling me how she created voices of different people in her life, in her head, and it's not even there what happens in reality. It's her version of how
Yeah.
those people almost try to control and instruct her and put responsibility onto her, including that she shared with me, even my voice was there, right? So it's kind of like she hires a
Well, of
coach.
course. Yeah. No, you will exist to her as a cardboard cutout. Like, there's a card, like like those movie posters or something like that. Like, that's a metaphor that I experienced the world through, right? And my wife and I have been together for almost 30 years. We do a lot of work together. We do couples therapy, not to save us, but to up level us. We know each other better than any other person can, and we still get each other wrong. Like, that. And I'm like, okay, if that's true for this person that I've known for 30 years, on the most intimate of levels, of course it's going to be true for everybody. Yeah.
Yes. So, and sometimes we discover, and often through that work, we discover a different sides of us, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And what if we put those voices, those cartoons, which is, your father is not around you. He's not there saying, do that, right?
He
And
lives in
that's
a different city. He's not banging at my door.
right, exactly.
He's not there now saying, "Loser, get to work." Like he's not there. I'm pointing at my door at my house.
Right. So,
I know that's ridiculous, and I live with it. Yeah. Yeah.
and the whole thing is that it's so real because you acknowledge something what people, well, throughout the world, everywhere, living with, right? And when we carry the strong energy of intensity, those voices are even stronger. And what if actually, if we look at them, it's it's a cartoon characters. What if it's not a scary movie? What if it's
Yeah.
like actually a playful game? And you're a gamer. Like,
I am.
how can you use your talent of gaming
Mm.
to turn it around?
Yeah. Yeah. I have to share this as you're describing the cartoon character, and we're talking about how my father was not actually there. The cartoon version of my dad that appeared to me was Yosemite Sam, from the Bugs Bunny cartoons, with the guy with the guns and the big mustache. So I started to think of my father as Yosemite Sam, and obviously it went from threatening and criticizing to comical, like just now, like 60 seconds ago. That just happened within me. So
How fun. How fun. And so imagine, Chris, what if, because what I know myself, when my versions of those cartoons show up, and I remember like probably a month ago, I had a big setback where my version of toxic intensity showed up so strongly because even though I'm used to receiving no's and I celebrate no's, but that particular no wasn't expected. I thought it will be yes. And it was for
Yeah.
something that was so important for me, for book on intensity, that it literally took me into that dark tunnel of my intensity so that I could experience it again, right? And when I'm in this tunnel vision, it's like, I'm just in a tunnel. How do you get out of the tunnel? And the only way is with this lightness and playfulness, right? So, so, so what if in that moment you draw the picture, I draw the picture? What would serve you, like in that moment of the complete darkness? And how that image of the tunnel and that bringing something playful lands for you, or might be you bring a different image.
Yeah. Well, I'm still sitting with it right now, how much it, like even within me right now, I could feel we were talking about something kind of heavy for me, right? And something I'm experiencing like in real time this week, this voice, and then just the attaching the Yosemite Sam image, because there's kind of a resemblance to my father, and just the way he talks and the guns and it lightened it for me, so, and then I keep pointing at my front door, which is in another room just over here. But it's Yosemite at my door, like it's and that makes me laugh, so that all just happened like in real time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, and
Mm.
now, what is then possible with that energy after this lightness has been brought in?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm not even going to answer that, but for sure, like it certainly opens up a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. So, what if you had to use 3 words for what
Mm.
is intensity for you? What is intensity for you in a healthy version?
Um, so my answer now is going to be certainly different than when we started this conversation, because I want to say laughter,
Mhm, mhm,
play,
mhm.
um, fun, like, uh, and it's all tied to that cartoon. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So and actually fun and laughter is quite intense, like, especially I think
It can
about this
be.
laughter, right? When it's
Yeah.
proper, those belly laughter, that's very intense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you talked about healthy intensity, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly, and I'm just thinking it's healthy.
exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about, and then the power of a good laugh, right? So, and even just as I'm kind of giggling a little bit as I was imagining Yosemite Sam at my door, I could just feel a release like happening. So, and that's not even like, and we know the power of a good belly laugh, when you're just like slapping the table and you're slapping your knee and you're just having a good belly laugh, and how healthy that is. And it's intense though, because your whole body is experiencing something. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe when somebody is an intense person is in the middle of this toxic intensity, what would bring this laughter and belly laugh out? And
Mm.
and what would be 3 words for you that describe when intensity goes into toxic version?
Pressure, um, judgment, fear.
Yes. Yes. And that is on that word, because turning fear into laughter and love for ourselves, and for that love
Hmm.
for others. That's what actually turns the intensity, the toxic intensity, into healthy version. And we all have our unique versions of fear that we're susceptible to. and recognizing it, and actually pouring so much love on this little boy and little girl that is within us,
Yeah.
imagined that scary cartoon.
Yeah, like I'm thinking of like the parent that the child is afraid of versus me laughing at the cartoon. Like it's completely different.
Yeah. So yeah, and on that note, so turning the fear into self-love and laughter through fun and joy, that's the path.
I
Simply
mean,
said.
I literally went through it just like during our time together today. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
thank you, Chris. It was a fun conversation for
It was
me.
fun.
And thank you to listeners who was with us or will listen in the future. So what is one thing you want listeners to take away?
Well, I'm going to share something I want. I'm looking for more connection. I'm on LinkedIn now for that reason. I'm putting my story more out into the world. I'm looking for opportunities. I'm looking for invitations. So, and I don't even know what kind of invitations I'm looking for. But if someone's intrigued by me, please connect on LinkedIn or on my website, chrisfrolic.com. And that's something I'm looking for.
Wonderful, Chris. Thank you for speaking it out. And I'm going to follow your lead. If somebody would want to have a conversation about intensity and toxic versus healthy version and the gradient in between, please reach out. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you.